They fired a shy intern on Christmas Eve for hearing voices calling her insane in front of 50 employees. But the Vampire King's CEO discovered she was the only thing keeping 347 vengeful spirits from destroying his empire. In 8 hours, those spirits would tear through reality itself. This is how she became the most powerful woman in his world. December 24th, 9:47 a.m. The voices started at 9:47 in the morning. Maya Chen's fingers trembled over her keyboard, the spreadsheet blurring on the monitor. Row after row of numbers dissolved into meaningless shapes as the whispers crawled through the walls behind her. 6 weeks of this torture, and no one believed her. Please, someone, please help us. She pressed her palms against her ears. It never helped. The voices didn't come from outside. They came from somewhere deeper. Somewhere she couldn't block no matter how hard she tried. The fluorescent lights of the East Wing hummed overhead, casting sterile white across 40 identical cubicles. Gray fabric walls, gray carpet, gray faces of coworkers who'd stopped looking at her weeks ago. They called her Crazy Maya now. She'd heard them whispering it in the break room. The cold seeped through the wall at her back, making her shiver despite the building's perfect climate control. Frost Tower's heating system never failed. Never. Yet here she sat in her thin cardigan teeth chattering while everyone else worked in short sleeves. So cold. We're so cold. Can anyone hear us? Maya's eyes burned. She blinked hard, forcing herself to focus on the screen. Accounts receivable. Invoice reconciliation. Normal things, real things. Things that proved she wasn't losing her mind. But the voices knew better. A shadow flickered at the edge of her vision. She turned her head slowly, afraid of what she'd see. The corner of her cubicle remained empty. Just gray fabric and the dying succulent plant she'd bought 3 months ago, back when she'd still had hope this internship might lead somewhere. Back before she'd started hearing the dead, because that's what they were. Maya had finally accepted it 2 weeks ago, in the dark silence of her studio apartment at 3 in the morning. Not hallucinations, not stress-induced auditory phenomena as the company doctor had suggested. Not the manifestation of untreated anxiety as her supervisor had implied. Ghosts, spirits, the restless dead trapped in the walls of the East Wing's 42nd floor, crying out for anyone who would listen. And she was the only one who could hear them. The clock on her computer screen read 9:53, 17 minutes until her 10 o'clock meeting with HR. Her stomach twisted. She knew what that meeting meant. She'd seen the careful way Patricia Morgan had worded the email. Professional, distant, the kind of language corporations used when they were about to destroy someone's life with perfect legal precision. We need to discuss your recent performance concerns and wellness observations. Maya had $127 in her checking account. Rent was due in 6 days. Her grandmother lived 2 hours north in Millbrook in a small yellow house with a mortgage she could barely afford. Maya couldn't ask her for help. Wouldn't. She'd figure something out. She always did. The whispers rose to a crescendo, dozens of voices overlapping until they became a wall of sound pressing against her skull. Maya's breath came short and sharp. Her vision tunneled. The cubicle walls seemed to lean inward, suffocating her. Then she saw him, a boy, 19, maybe 20. He stood 3 feet away, translucent in the fluorescent light. Tattered Union Army uniform, the kind she'd seen in history books. Dark hair plastered to his forehead. Eyes that held a desperate, aching sorrow. "Please don't leave us," he mouthed. "Please don't go." Maya's chair scraped backward. Her elbow knocked her coffee mug off the desk. Ceramic shattered. Dark liquid spread across gray carpet like blood. The boy vanished. Maya, she jerked her head up. Marcus from accounting stood in her cubicle entrance, eyebrows raised. Behind him, 2 heads peeked over neighboring cube walls. Watching. Always watching. "You okay?" Marcus asked, but his tone said he already knew the answer. Already had his opinion formed and filed away. "Fine." Maya's voice came out too high, too tight. "Just clumsy." Marcus's gaze dropped to the shattered mug, then back to her face. He didn't believe her. No one did anymore. He nodded once, slow and careful, the way you'd nod at a wounded animal you didn't want to startle. "HR meetings in 5, he said. "Conference room B." Then he was gone. Maya knelt beside her shin, picking up ceramic shards with shaking hands. Coffee soaked into the knees of her gray slacks. The same slacks she'd bought at the discount store with her first paycheck back when this job had felt like a door opening. Now they were just another reminder of how little she had, how easily she could lose it all. The voices quieted to murmurs. Watching, waiting. She knew what was coming. Conference room B sat at the end of a long hallway lined with motivational posters. Excellence, innovation, integrity, corporate buzzwords printed on glossy paper as hollow as the building's promise of career advancement for hardworking interns. Maya's reflection caught in the glass walls as she walked. 24 years old, but looking younger, with dark circles under brown eyes and hair pulled into a messy ponytail. Her grandmother's eyes, people always said, sharp and observant, seeing things others missed. Right now, she wished she could see less, hear less, be normal. The conference room door stood open. Inside, 3 people waited. Patricia Morgan sat at the head of the table, 45 years old, and sharp as broken glass with severe glasses and a mouth that rarely smiled. She'd built her career on enforcing company policy, on protecting Frost Tower from liability, on eliminating problems before they became lawsuits. Maya was a problem. David Torres, head of security, stood near the window. 40-something ex-military with the kind of neutral expression that came from years of following orders without question. He wouldn't meet her eyes. And Jeffrey Chen from legal, holding a tablet like a shield. The setup told her everything. HR, security, legal. The termination trifecta. Maya. Patricia's voice could have frozen water. Please sit down. Maya sat. The chair felt like an execution bench. I'll get straight to the point, Patricia said, folding her hands on the table. We've been monitoring your performance over the past 6 weeks, and we have significant concerns about your wellness and fitness for continued employment. The corporate speak felt like cotton in Maya's ears. She focused on Patricia's hands instead. Manicured nails, a gold wedding band that probably cost more than Maya made in 3 months. Hands that had never known real hardship. This isn't about your work output, Patricia continued. Your spreadsheets are adequate. Your attendance has been acceptable. This is about your repeated claims of hearing voices in the building. Heat crawled up Maya's neck. I wasn't making claims. I was reporting actual sounds. You told 3 different people that you hear crying in the walls. Patricia's tone remained flat factual. You sent multiple emails to maintenance claiming there are people trapped in the East Wing. You've disrupted 2 team meetings by asking if anyone else can hear screaming. Because there is screaming, Maya wanted to shout. Because they're terrified and desperate and no one will listen. But she'd learned silence was safer. We consulted with our occupational health team, Patricia said. Given the nature and persistence of your reports combined with your inability to focus on assigned tasks, we believe you're experiencing extreme workplace stress, possibly a breakdown. I'm not having a breakdown. Maya's voice came out small. She hated how powerless she sounded. I'm trying to help. Help who exactly? Patricia leaned forward. There's no one in the walls, Maya. Maintenance has checked multiple times. The building is secure. What you're describing are hallucinations, auditory disturbances, signs of psychological distress. The lights flickered. Brief, almost imperceptible. But Maya saw Patricia's eyes dart to the ceiling just for a second. She knows, Maya realized with sudden crystalline clarity. She knows something's wrong with this building. We're terminating your internship effective immediately, Patricia said, sliding a folder across the table. For your own well-being. We'll provide a neutral reference that notes you completed 3 months here, but we need you to leave the premises today. The room tilted. Maya gripped the edge of the table. It's December 24th, she whispered. Christmas Eve. Which is why we're handling this quietly and compassionately. Patricia's expression didn't change. We're not making this a spectacle, Maya. We're concerned for you. You need professional help. Psychiatric evaluation. Treatment. Don't leave us. Please don't leave us alone. The voices rose in her head, panicked now, desperate. They could feel her slipping away, feel the tether between them stretching thin. You're making a mistake, Maya said. Her hands were shaking. There's something in this building, something you're ignoring, and it's going to get worse. Patricia stood. The meeting was over. David will escort you to collect your belongings. You have 15 minutes. The walk back to her desk felt eternal. David Torres walked 3 steps behind, silent as a shadow. Other interns watched from their cubicles, some with pity, most with relief that it wasn't them being paraded down the hallway like a criminal. Maya packed quickly. Coffee mug shards wrapped in paper towels. The dying succulent. A framed photo of her grandmother taken 10 years ago when Maya was 14, when the voices had first started as faint whispers she'd learned to ignore. Grandma Eleanor stood in front of her yellow house in Millbrook, silver hair, gleaming in summer sun, smiling at the camera. But her eyes held something Maya recognized now. A sadness, a weight, the burden of knowing things other people couldn't see. Grandma had heard them too. Maya was certain of it. The cardboard box felt heavier than it should. David held the door as Maya stepped into the hallway one last time. The whispers followed her, threads of sound clinging like spider silk. Then Patricia's voice cut through the building's ambient noise. David, take her through the lobby. I want this on record. Maya's blood went cold. What company policy? Patricia said, appearing from nowhere, heels clicking on polished floor. All terminations must be witnessed and documented for liability purposes. She was lying. Maya could see it in the slight curl of her lip. This wasn't policy. This was punishment. December 24th, 10:43 a.m. The elevator descended in terrible silence. 42 floors down, each number lighting up like a countdown. Maya stared at her reflection in the polished steel doors. She looked small, defeated, but her jaw was set, her spine straight. They could take her job. They couldn't take her dignity. The elevator chimed. The doors opened onto the lobby. Maya stepped out into her nightmare. The lobby of Frost Tower was a cathedral of glass and marble designed to inspire awe. 83 floors of corporate power stretched overhead. A fountain dominated the center, water cascading over bronze sculptures. During lunch hours, the space hummed with hundreds of employees moving between the building's three towers, the underground parking, the street-level shops. Right now at 10:43 on a Thursday morning, at least 50 people occupied the space, and they were all about to watch Maya's humiliation. Patricia moved to the security desk where Tom Williams sat behind monitors and controls. She whispered something. Tom's eyes widened. He shook his head once. Patricia's expression hardened. She whispered again. Tom's hand moved to the intercom button. No, Maya thought. Please, no. The speaker system crackled to life. Tom's voice, amplified and inescapable, echoed through the lobby. Attention, Maya Chen is being terminated and escorted from the premises for wellness violations. Please maintain distance and allow security to complete the exit protocol. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. 50 pairs of eyes fixed on Maya like searchlights. The lobby fell silent except for the fountain's steady flow. Maya stood frozen cardboard box clutched to her chest, feeling every stare like a physical touch. Heat burned in her cheeks. Her throat closed. Tears pressed behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Patricia stepped forward, her voice carrying across the marble expanse. Maya has been claiming she hears voices in the building, reporting hallucinations as fact, creating disruption and concern among her colleagues. Patricia addressed the crowd like a prosecutor. This behavior is dangerous, not just to her, but to everyone who works here. We take mental health seriously at Frost Tower, which is why we're ensuring she receives appropriate referrals and support. The words were wrapped in concern, but the message underneath was clear. She's insane. She's broken. Stay away from her. David Torres touched Maya's elbow. Let's go. The walk to the glass doors stretched like a mile. Maya counted her steps. 1, 2, 3. Marble tiles gleamed under her feet, each one probably costing more than her monthly rent. 4, 5, 6. A woman in designer heels stepped back, pulling her phone closer as if mental illness might be contagious. 7, 8, 9. Someone took a photo. The flash made Maya flinch. Delete that, David said sharply. 10, 11, 12. The automatic doors sensed her approach and slid open. December air hit her face sharp with cold and the promise of snow. Maya stepped onto the sidewalk and suddenly, mercifully, the building was behind her. The doors closed. The voices stopped. The silence was so sudden, so complete that Maya gasped. She spun around, staring up at Frost Tower's glass facade. 83 floors of steel and ambition gleaming against the gray December sky. Windows reflected clouds and city giving nothing away. But inside those walls, in the bones of the building, 347 voices had been crying out for help. And now, for the first time in 6 weeks, Maya's head was quiet, empty, silent. She stood on the sidewalk, snowflakes beginning to drift down around her, and felt the absence like a physical wound. The voices had been torture, but they'd also been real. They'd been proof she wasn't crazy. Now she had nothing but the cardboard box in her arms and $127 to her name. A businessman shouldered past, muttering about people blocking the sidewalk. Maya stumbled forward, autopilot carrying her toward the subway entrance. Her phone buzzed. A text from her landlord. Rent reminder due December 30th. No exceptions this time, Maya. She descended into the subway, into the warm recycled air and the rumble of trains. Commuters packed the platform, everyone absorbed in their phones, their lives, their problems. No one noticed the girl with the cardboard box and red eyes. The train arrived. Maya found a seat between a sleeping man and a teenager with headphones. As the train lurched into motion darkness outside the windows, she finally let the tears come. Silent, sliding down her cheeks, falling onto the photo of her grandmother that she clutched in her lap. Grandma Eleanor smiled up at her from the frame, and Maya suddenly knew with absolute certainty that her grandmother would have answers, would understand, would know why Maya could hear what no one else could. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands in search for bus schedules to Millbrook. The train rattled through tunnels beneath the city, carrying her away from Frost Tower. Behind her in the building she just left, something ancient stirred and began to wake. December 24th, 11:47 p.m. Gabriel Frost returned to his office at 11:47 that night. He preferred the building after hours, when the humans went home, when the fluorescent lights dimmed to emergency levels, when he could move through the hallways without pretending to be something he wasn't. The elevator climbed smoothly to the 83rd floor, and he stepped out into darkness. His office was exactly as he'd left it that morning. Mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a crystal decanter of something that wasn't wine, but looked enough like it to avoid questions from the rare visitor who made it this far. He poured himself a glass and stood at the window. Snow fell over the glittering streets below. Christmas lights blinked in apartment windows. Somewhere families were gathering. Children were hanging stockings. Humans celebrating their brief, bright lives. Gabriel had stopped celebrating Christmas in 1847. Too many memories. Too much loss. He took a sip and froze. Something was wrong. The taste was fine. The blood was fresh enough, properly stored, correctly preserved. But the feeling in the building had changed. In 312 years of walking these halls, Gabriel had developed an instinct for the structure's moods. The building breathed. It settled. It hummed with a particular energy that only he could sense. Tonight it felt hollow. He set down the glass and walked to the window, pressing one pale hand against the cold glass. His reflection stared back. Dark hair, sharp features, eyes that hadn't aged since 1724, when a vampire queen had found him dying in a London alley and offered him a choice: death or eternity. He'd chosen eternity. Sometimes he regretted it. Behind him the office was silent. Too silent. Gabriel closed his eyes and listened. Every building had its sounds: pipes groaning, wind whistling through ventilation shafts, the subtle creak of steel expanding and contracting. But Frost Tower had something else, something only Gabriel could hear. The murmurs. For decades they'd been there. Faint whispers in the walls, barely audible even to his heightened senses. He'd grown so accustomed to them that they'd become background noise, like the hum of electricity or the distant rumble of traffic. They were warnings, reminders. The voices of those who died here long before he'd built his empire on their bones. Tonight they were gone. Gabriel's eyes snapped open. His jaw tightened. He moved quickly now, his preternatural speed carrying him down the hall toward the east wing. His footsteps echoed too loudly in the emptiness. The building felt wrong, like a house after everyone had moved out, leaving only dust and memories. The east wing was the oldest part of the structure. When Gabriel had purchased the land in 1923, he'd known what lay beneath: a mass grave from a forgotten war, unmarked and unmourned. 347 soldiers buried in haste after a battle most history books had erased. He'd built over it anyway, because he was a businessman first and a vampire second, and the location was perfect. But he'd been careful. He'd hired specialists, not human contractors, but those who understood the veil between worlds. Witches, mediums, those who could sense what others couldn't. They'd bound the spirits, created wards, established a delicate balance. The dead would stay quiet. The living would stay safe. For 100 years it had worked. Now as Gabriel pushed open the door to the east wing corridor, he felt the balance tipping. The hallway stretched before him. Emergency exit signs cast red shadows on the walls. Empty cubicles lined both sides. This was the intern section. This was the expendable employees who came and went like seasons, never staying long enough to notice the cold spots or the whispers or the way shadows sometimes moved against the light. Gabriel walked slowly, his senses straining. The air was too still. No murmurs, no warnings, just an oppressive, waiting silence. He stopped in the middle of the corridor and placed his palm flat against the wall. Nothing. The spirits that had murmured for decades were simply gone. No, not gone. Gabriel's eyes narrowed. He could still feel them, a presence beneath the surface, like a held breath. They were there, but they weren't speaking. They were waiting. A cold knot formed in his chest. Gabriel had survived 3 centuries by trusting his instincts, and every instinct he had was screaming danger. Something had changed, something critical. He pulled out his phone and dialed his head of security. The call connected after 2 rings. Sir David Torres sounded surprised. It's after midnight. I need the security logs for today, Gabriel said quietly. Any unusual activity in the East Wing? A pause. The sound of typing. East Wing. No, sir. Everything's been quiet. We did have to escort someone out this morning, but who? Just an intern. Maya Chen. HR flagged her for wellness concerns. She was claiming she heard voices in the walls. Gabriel went very, very still. She heard voices, he repeated slowly. Yes, sir, for weeks apparently. Maintenance checked multiple times. Nothing there. HR decided to let her go. For her own good. Gabriel hung up. For a long moment he stood alone in the silent corridor, his mind racing through possibilities and consequences. An intern who heard voices. An intern they'd fired and sent away. And now the spirits were silent. He looked down at his hands. They were steady. But inside something ancient and primal was stirring. The feeling he hadn't experienced in over a century. Fear. The spirits weren't gone. They were gathering, building, preparing. And the one person who could hear them, who could calm them, who might have been unknowingly maintaining the balance, they'd just thrown her out onto the street. Gabriel pulled up the security footage on his phone. 10:43 a.m. A young woman with dark hair and a cardboard box walking through the lobby while dozens of employees watched. The timestamp showed Patricia Morgan speaking to the crowd. Gabriel's jaw clenched. A public termination. A humiliation. He zoomed in on the girl's face. Maya Chen, 24 years old according to her employee file. Brown eyes that held more weight than someone her age should carry. Shoulders squared despite the shame being heaped on her. She'd been listening to the dead, and they'd called her insane. What have we done? Gabriel whispered to the empty hall. The building didn't answer. But somewhere in the walls something shifted. A tremor. A crack in the foundation of 100 years of careful balance. And Gabriel Frost realized that the silence wasn't peace. It was the quiet before a storm. He walked back to his office already calculating. He needed to find Maya Chen. Needed to bring her back. Needed to undo the damage Patricia Morgan's short-sightedness had caused. But even as he planned, even as he searched databases for her address, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered a terrible truth. It might already be too late. December 25th, 9:15 a.m. The elevator stopped between floors 42 and 43 at exactly 9:15 the next morning. Jennifer Kim pressed the emergency button 3 times before she realized it wasn't working. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied into a dim yellow glow that made the small space feel like a cage. Hello, she called into the intercom. Static crackled back. This is Jennifer Kim, elevator C, I'm stuck. No response. She checked her phone, no signal. Of course not. She was suspended in a steel box in the middle of the building, probably exactly where the cell tower dead zone was strongest. Jennifer took a breath and tried to calm her racing heart. This was fine. Elevators got stuck all the time. Security would notice. Someone would come. The temperature dropped so suddenly she saw her breath mist in the air. Jennifer wrapped her arms around herself, confused. Frost Tower's climate control was legendary. The building never got cold. Never. But now frost was forming on the metal walls, crystallizing in delicate patterns that looked almost like reaching hands. What the hell, she whispered. The lights went out completely. In the darkness, Jennifer heard breathing that wasn't her own, slow, raspy, coming from the corner of the elevator where no one else was standing. She fumbled for her phone, hands shaking, and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating empty space. She was alone, but the breathing continued, and then something touched her shoulder. Jennifer screamed and lurched forward, slamming against the elevator doors. The touch had been ice cold, not like a hand, like something trying to remember how hands worked. The lights blazed back on, blindingly bright. The elevator lurched and began moving upward. Jennifer stood pressed against the doors, gasping, her heart hammering so hard it hurt. The panel showed the numbers climbing, 43, 44, 45. When it finally stopped at 50, she burst out before the doors fully opened and ran straight to security. December 25th, 10:30 a.m. By 10:30, Gabriel had 3 more reports on his desk. A maintenance worker had collapsed in the East Wing storage room, claiming invisible hands had pushed him down the stairs. He was being treated for a sprained ankle and what the medics called acute panic response. 2 analysts reported their computers glitching simultaneously, displaying text they hadn't typed. Help us. Remember us. Security cameras on floors 40 through 50 were showing shadows moving through empty corridors. Shadows that didn't correspond to any physical objects. Gabriel stood in the security office, watching footage replay on 6 different monitors. David Torres hovered beside him, his face pale. "Sir, I've worked here 12 years, David said quietly. "I've never seen anything like this." On the screen, a dark shape drifted across the hallway of the 42nd floor. It moved against the direction of the light, defying physics. As they watched, it paused in front of the elevator doors, the same elevator Jennifer Kim had been trapped in, and seemed to press against them. The footage cut to static. "Electrical interference," David tried. "Maybe a power surge." "It's not electrical," Gabriel said flatly. He'd spent the entire night researching, pulling records from archives that most of his current employees didn't know existed. Birth certificates, death certificates, property deeds dating back to 1863. The land beneath Frost Tower had been a battlefield during a conflict most history books had forgotten. 347 people had died there in a single week. They'd been buried quietly without ceremony, and then the city had built over them, paved over their graves, forgotten them, except some long-dead architect or city planner had written a note in the margins of a construction report from 1923. "A listener must remain." Gabriel had found that phrase 3 more times in documents spanning decades. Always handwritten, always in different ink, always the same warning: a listener must remain. Maya Chen had been listening, and they'd sent her away. "Sir," David ventured, "what do you want me to do?" Gabriel watched another shadow drift across the screen. This one was larger, more defined. It almost looked human-shaped. Behind it, a door slammed shut hard enough to crack the glass window. "Lock down the east wing," Gabriel said. "No one goes in or out until I say otherwise." "The entire wing, sir, that's 3 floors of office space." "Now." David swallowed and reached for his radio. "Security team, this is Torres. Initiate lockdown protocol for floors 40, 41, and 42. East wing access restricted until further notice." The radio crackled. "Copy that. Can I ask why?" "Don't ask," David said. "Just do it." Gabriel turned away from the monitors and walked toward the door, his reflection caught in the glass. Pale, ageless, undeniably other. He looked like a man, but he'd stopped being human before America was a country. "Where are you going?" David called after him. "To fix a mistake," Gabriel said. Behind him, on every security monitor in the office, the shadows multiplied. They pressed against doors. They flickered across walls. And in the grainy footage of the East Wing corridor, where Maya's cubicle had been, frost began spreading across the floor in a pattern that looked disturbingly like words. David leaned closer to read them. His blood ran cold. "Bring her back. December 25th, 3:33 a.m. Earlier that morning, Maya woke at 3:33 in the morning to the sound of sobbing. She lay perfectly still in her narrow bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling of her studio apartment. The crying was soft at first, distant, muffled like someone weeping in another room. But her apartment was a studio. There was no other room. "Please, so cold. Please help us." Her blood turned to ice. The voices were back. Maya sat up slowly, her heart pounding against her ribs. This wasn't possible. She'd left the building. She'd walked away from Frost Tower, and the voices had stopped. For one blessed afternoon and evening, her head had been silent. Now they were here, in her home, alone. "You left us alone. Why did you leave?" The voices came from everywhere and nowhere, seeping through the walls, rising from the floorboards, pressing against the single window that looked out onto the fire escape. Maya wrapped her blanket around her shoulders and stood on trembling legs. "You're not real," she whispered. "You can't be here. You're at the building. You're supposed to stay at the building. You left us." This voice was different, sharp with betrayal. "We were quiet for you. We were good. Why did you abandon us?" "I didn't abandon anyone." Maya's voice cracked. "I was fired. They made me leave." The sobbing grew louder, multiplying into a chorus of grief that made her head throb. She pressed her hands over her ears, but it was useless. The voices weren't coming from outside. They were coming from inside, from some part of her consciousness she couldn't shut off. Her neighbor pounded on the wall. "Keep it down!" Maya wanted to laugh hysterically. Her neighbor couldn't hear them. No one could hear them but her. She stumbled to the kitchenette and turned on every light. The bulb over the sink flickered and died. The lamp by her bed surged too bright, then dimmed. In the strobing light, Maya saw frost forming on the inside of her window. So cold, so dark. "We've been waiting so long." "Waiting for what?" Maya demanded, her voice shaking. "What do you want from me?" "Listen, please, you're the only one who listens." She sank onto the floor, her back against the refrigerator. The voices swirled around her, dozens of them now, maybe hundreds. They overlapped, creating a wall of sound that was both deafening and somehow intimate, as if each voice was speaking directly into her ear. But beneath the chaos, Maya started to notice something. The voices weren't random. They had a pattern, a rhythm. They were trying to tell her something. She closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe, to actually listen instead of just hearing. We were soldiers, just boys. They left us in the ground. No names, no stones, just dirt and forgetting. She used to come. She used to sit with us. She made it quiet. Then she stopped. And it hurt. And now you stopped. And it hurts worse. Maya's eyes snapped open. Someone else could hear you before me. The voices shifted, becoming almost calmer as if her question had soothed them somehow. Long ago she came every day, sat in the corner, hummed sometimes. We could rest when she was near. But then she left too. And it got loud again, so loud, so angry, until you came. Realization crashed over Maya like a wave. At the building when she'd been at her cubicle in the East Wing, the voices had never been violent. Sad, yes, desperate, yes, but never hostile. She hadn't been hearing a haunting. She'd been hearing them seek comfort. "You're not trying to scare me," she whispered. "You're just lost. And when I was there, I made it better somehow. Yes, yes, please come back. Please don't leave us in the dark." "But I can't." Maya's hands were shaking. "I don't know how to help you. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just me and I'm nobody." "You listen. That's everything. That's all we need. Someone to know we're here." The temperature in the apartment began to rise. The frost on the window melted, trickling down the glass like tears. The voices grew softer, less frantic. Some of them faded to whispers, as if the speakers were drifting back to sleep. Maya sat on her kitchen floor, wrapped in a blanket, finally understanding the truth. The building wasn't haunted, it was a graveyard, and she had been unknowingly its only mourner. Now that she was gone, the dead had followed her, because they had nowhere else to go. No one else who would acknowledge their existence. Outside the city continued its indifferent hum. Sirens wailed in the distance. A garbage truck rumbled past, and Maya Chen realized that running away wasn't going to work. The voices would follow her everywhere, to every job, every home, every quiet moment, unless she went back. "Please," the voices whispered, softer now, almost gentle. "Please don't leave us alone again." Maya pulled her knees to her chest, and then she reached for her phone, searching for bus schedules to Millbrook. Her grandmother would have answers. December 25th, 6:45 a.m. The bus to Millbrook left at 6:45 in the morning. Maya sat near the back, her backpack clutched in her lap, watching the city give way to suburbs, then to rural highways lined with bare trees. Snow had fallen overnight, dusting everything white. The world looked clean, new, like someone had erased all the mistakes and given everyone a fresh start. Maya wished it were that easy. Her phone buzzed, a notification from her bank. $12 overdraft fee. She was down to $115 now. Soon it would be 100. Then 50? Then nothing. She closed her eyes and leaned her head against the cold window. The voices had quieted after her decision to seek her grandmother. As if they knew, as if they approved. Now they were just a low murmur in the back of her mind. Waiting, always waiting. December 25th, 9:30 a.m. The bus pulled into Millbrook at 9:30. Population 4,200. One main street with a diner, a pharmacy, a hardware store. American flags on lampposts. Christmas wreaths on doors. The kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business, for better or worse. Maya walked through melting snow to Maple Drive. The yellow house sat at the end, small and perfect, with a porch swing that creaked in the winter wind. She'd spent summers here as a child before her mother died, before the voices became too loud to ignore. She climbed the porch steps and knocked. Footsteps shuffled inside. The door opened to reveal a small woman with silver hair pulled into a bun. 79 years old, but still sharp-eyed, still straight-backed, still carrying herself like someone who'd survived things most people couldn't imagine. Grandmother Eleanor's face went pale. "Maya." Her voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "I need answers, Grandma." Maya's voice was steady, but her hands shook. "About the voices, about what I am." Eleanor glanced past Maya toward the street, as if checking whether anyone was watching. Then she stepped aside. "Come in." Quickly. The house smelled like lavender and old books. Eleanor led Maya to the kitchen and immediately put the kettle on, her solution to every crisis. They sat at the worn wooden table where Maya had eaten countless cookies as a child. You went to work at that building, Eleanor said quietly. It wasn't a question. Frost Tower. I was an intern. Maya wrapped her arms around herself. They fired me yesterday because I reported hearing voices in the walls. But Grandma, they were real. They are real. And now they followed me home. Eleanor's hand trembled as she poured tea into two chipped mugs. She sat down heavily and stared into her cup like it might hold answers. I hoped it would skip you, she whispered. Your mother didn't have it. I thought maybe the bloodline had thinned enough. I thought you'd be free. Free from what? Eleanor looked up. Tears filled her eyes. From the burden our family has carried for 7 generations. We're veil seers, Maya. We hear the dead. And more than that, we calm them. The kitchen felt too small suddenly. Maya gripped her mug, the warmth barely registering through her numb fingers. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to have a normal life. Eleanor's voice cracked. I spent 42 years sitting in that building, listening to soldiers cry for their mothers. 42 years of whispers and cold spots and nightmares. When I finally retired, I thought I was done. I thought I'd freed our family from it. You worked there, Maya breathed. At Frost Tower. It was called Cormac Enterprises back then. Same building, different name. Eleanor stood and pulled a small wooden box from the top cabinet. She set it on the table and opened it, revealing old photographs, newspaper clippings, and a folded letter yellowed with age. She handed Maya a photograph. It showed a young woman, Eleanor, maybe 25, sitting at a desk in an office. The photo was black and white, but Maya could see the East Wing through the window behind her. I was hired as a secretary, Eleanor said, but that wasn't my real job. My real job was to sit in the East Wing every day and listen. Just listen. The spirits would speak and I would acknowledge them. That's all they needed. Someone to know they existed, to remember them. But why you? Why our family? Eleanor pulled out another photograph. This one much older, the edges crumbling. It showed a woman in Victorian-era clothing standing in front of a wooden building. That's my grandmother, Eliza Chen. Eleanor's voice softened with memory. She married late, took her husband's name Howell, but she was born a Chen, our family name. Maya stared at the photograph. The woman's face was stern but kind. She wore a nurse's uniform, the kind from a century and a half ago. She was the first. Eleanor traced the photograph with a wrinkled finger. In 1863, after the battle, she was a nurse. She tended to the dying. When they buried the soldiers in unmarked graves, she stayed. She visited them, spoke to them, and something changed in her. She could hear them after they died. The ability passed down, Maya whispered, to her daughter, then to my mother, then to me. Eleanor looked at Maya with infinite sadness. We've always been listeners, keepers, the women who tend to the forgotten dead. It's not a gift, Maya, it's a calling, and it costs everything. Professionally, I used Howell, my married name, Eleanor continued. It felt safer, more professional, but we're Chens by blood. That's what matters to the spirits. Maya thought of the voices that had haunted her for weeks, that followed her even now. You said you retired. How did you stop hearing them? I didn't stop. Eleanor's voice turned bitter. I left. I walked away and told myself someone else would take over. The company promised they'd find another listener. She paused. They lied, or they forgot. And now there's no one, Maya finished. Eleanor reached across the table and gripped Maya's hands. You walked into that building and they recognized what you were. They latched on to you because you're the first person in 5 years who could hear them. The kettle whistled, forgotten. Outside, a car drove past. Life continued normal and mundane, but Maya's world had shifted forever. What do I do? She asked quietly. Eleanor was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was heavy with regret. You have 2 choices. You can run, move far away, build walls in your mind. Try to block them out. Some veil seers manage it. They live half lives, never quite present, always haunted. She squeezed Maya's hands. Or you go back. You accept what you are. You become what they need. Eleanor's eyes held centuries of pain. But know this, if you choose that path, you're choosing isolation. Normal people don't understand. Employers think you're crazy. Friends drift away. You'll spend your life listening to the dead instead of living with the living. Maya closed her eyes. She thought of the spirit's desperate pleas. Please don't leave us alone. She thought of the boy's voice that had whispered, you listen. That's everything. I'm already alone, she said softly. At least with them, someone needs me. Eleanor's face crumbled. She pulled Maya into a fierce hug. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't prepare you. I thought I was protecting you. I know, Grandma. They held each other as the afternoon light slanted through the kitchen window. Two women bound by blood in an unwanted gift that neither had chosen but both had inherited. And Maya made her decision. But before she could speak, Eleanor pulled back. Her expression had changed, hardened. There's something else you need to know. Eleanor reached back into the box and pulled out a manila folder. About why you were hired. Maya's stomach dropped. What do you mean? 5 years ago, when I retired, the company promised to find a replacement. They didn't. The spirits grew restless. Dangerous. Eleanor opened the folder. 6 months ago, I called them. I told them they needed a new listener. They refused, said they didn't believe in such superstitious nonsense. She pulled out a document, a hiring authorization form. Maya's name at the top. So I called someone I used to know, someone who worked in HR. Eleanor's voice dropped. Patricia Morgan. She was a secretary when I worked there. We were friends once. I told her about you, about your gift. I asked her to hire you, quietly, to put you in the East Wing. Maya stared at the form, Patricia's signature at the bottom. She agreed, Eleanor whispered. She promised she'd take care of you, that she'd make sure you were safe, that she'd explain everything when the time was right. But she didn't. Maya's voice was hollow. She fired me. She called me insane in front of 50 people. I know. Eleanor's hands were shaking. I called her this morning when I heard what happened. She wouldn't take my call. Tears streamed down her face. I'm so sorry, Maya. I thought I was helping. I thought December 25th, 4:15 p.m. A knock at the door cut her off. Both women froze. The knock came again, firm, insistent. Eleanor stood slowly and walked to the front window. She pulled back the curtain and gasped. There's a man outside. Her voice was strange, tight. A very pale man, standing in full daylight like it doesn't hurt him. Maya's heart began to pound. What does he look like? Dark hair, expensive suit, eyes that look like they've seen centuries. Eleanor turned to Maya. He's one of them, a night walker. The knock came a third time. I know you're in there, a voice called through the door, male, cultured, with an edge of desperation. Eleanor Chen, Maya Chen, I need to speak with you both, please. It's about Frost Tower, about the spirits. They're breaking through. Maya stood and walked to the door before Eleanor could stop her. She looked through the peephole. A man stood on the porch, tall, impossibly still in a way that no living person could manage. Dark hair framed a face that was beautiful in the way marble sculptures were beautiful. Cold, perfect, inhuman. But his eyes held something she hadn't expected. Fear. Maya opened the door. Gabriel Frost stood 3 feet away, and she suddenly understood why the building bore his name. He looked like winter incarnate, like something that had walked out of a fairy tale and forgotten to go back. You, she breathed. You're the CEO. I am. His voice was exactly as she'd imagined, deep and resonant with traces of an accent she couldn't place. British, maybe, or something older. And you're Maya Chen, the listener they fired. Eleanor appeared at Maya's shoulder. Get away from my granddaughter, Nightwalker. I'm not here to hurt her. Gabriel's gaze shifted to Eleanor. His expression softened. Eleanor Howell, you worked in my building for 42 years. You were one of the best listeners we ever had. I'm sorry we let you down. You let Maya down, Eleanor snapped. I know. Gabriel looked back at Maya. I'm here to apologize and to beg. Maya crossed her arms. You had your HR director humiliate me in front of 50 people. You had security escort me out like a criminal. Why should I listen to anything you have to say? Because 347 souls are tearing through the veil between worlds, Gabriel said quietly. Because the building is being haunted by spirits that have waited 160 years for peace. Because I made a mistake, and now innocent people are going to die. He stepped closer. Maya didn't back away. And because you're the only one who can stop it. The wind picked up swirling snow around Gabriel's feet. He didn't seem to notice the cold. I didn't know, he said. I didn't know about you, about what you were. I've been living in that building for 100 years hearing the murmurs, but I didn't understand what happened when you left. His jaw tightened. The spirits followed you because you're the first person in 5 years who could hear them. And now that you're gone, they're breaking free. Good, Maya said. Her voice was sharp, cold. Let them. Let everyone see what that building has been hiding. Let them know what happens when you bury soldiers without names and build your empire on their bones. Gabriel flinched, the first real reaction she'd seen from him. "You're right," he said. "You're absolutely right. But if they break through completely, they won't just haunt the building. They'll tear the veil open. And every spirit, every entity, every nightmare that's been held back by that barrier will come through with them." He pulled out his phone and showed her a video. Security footage from Frost Tower. Shadows moving through hallways. Windows fogging from the inside. And in the lobby, frost spreading across the floor in clear, deliberate letters. "Bring her back." "They want you," Gabriel said, "and they're willing to destroy everything to get your attention." Maya stared at the footage. Her chest tightened. "There's more," Gabriel said. He pulled up news clips, footage from outside the building, reporters, police barricades, and in one shot, clear as day, a translucent figure standing in a window, a young soldier in a Union uniform. The footage had gone viral. Hashtags were trending. Hashtag Frost Tower haunted. Hashtag proof of ghosts. Hashtag what is happening. "The Vampire Council is meeting right now," Gabriel said. "They're going to vote on a solution. And their solution is to burn the spirits out, to destroy them completely and seal the veil by force." "Can they do that?" Eleanor asked. "Yes." Gabriel's expression was grim. "But it won't work the way they think. The spirits are bound to a mass grave. If the council tries to destroy them forcibly, the backlash will be catastrophic. The veil won't seal. It'll tear open permanently. And the explosion of energy will level 10 city blocks." He looked at Maya. "Thousands of people will die. Maybe tens of thousands." Maya's hands were shaking. "What time are they voting?" "Sunset." Gabriel checked his watch. 5:52 p.m. We have just over an hour. "And what do you expect me to do?" Maya demanded. "Walk back into that building and what?" Asked them nicely to calm down. "I expect you to do what you've always done." Gabriel's voice gentled. "Listen to them. Acknowledge them. Give them what they've been denied for over a century." He paused. "Someone who sees them as people, not problems." Maya stared at him. This vampire who'd lived for centuries, who owned an empire built on forgotten graves, who was asking her to save him from consequences he'd helped create. But beneath the anger, beneath the fear, she heard the voices. "Please, please come back. We're so scared." She thought of the young soldier she'd seen in her cubicle, the one who'd looked at her with desperate, aching sorrow. James. His name came to her like a whisper on the wind. Private James Mitchell, 19 years old. He wanted to be an artist. "I'll go," Maya said quietly, "but not for you, for them." Gabriel's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you." "But I have conditions," Maya continued. Her voice was stronger now. "If I do this, if I help them find peace, I want answers. I want to know why they're there, what happened to them, and I want to guarantee that they'll be remembered, really remembered." "You have my word." Gabriel inclined his head. "Whatever you want, whatever they need." Eleanor gripped Maya's arm. "Sweetheart, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." Maya looked at her grandmother. "You carried this burden alone for 42 years. You spent your whole life listening to them. And when you left, no one replaced you. No one cared." She turned back to Gabriel. "That ends now. If I do this, things change. Completely." "Agreed," Gabriel said without hesitation. "Then let's go." December 25th, 4:30 p.m. Gabriel's car was a black sedan that probably cost more than Maya would make in 10 years. She climbed into the passenger seat while Eleanor stood on the porch watching them leave. "Be careful," Eleanor called. "And Maya, I love you." "I love you too, Grandma." The car pulled away from the yellow house. Maya watched in the side mirror as Eleanor grew smaller, then disappeared. They drove in silence for 10 minutes. The highway stretched ahead gray and empty. Snow had started falling again, light flakes that stuck to the windshield before the wipers swept them away. "I need to tell you something," Gabriel said finally. "About the spirits, about why they're there." Maya turned to look at him. In the daylight filtering through clouds, he looked almost human. Almost. "I'm listening." Gabriel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "In 1863, there was a battle, a small one, not one history remembers. 347 Union soldiers were sent to hold a position against Confederate forces. They were outnumbered 5-1. They didn't stand a chance." His voice was flat, emotionless. But Maya heard the strain beneath it. The general who gave that order knew they would die. He sent them anyway. Sacrificed them to buy time for the main army to regroup. Gabriel paused. "That general was my brother." Maya's breath caught. "I was there," Gabriel continued. "I was a soldier myself, 22 years old. I tried to talk him out of it. begged him to find another way, but he wouldn't listen. He said war required hard choices. Gabriel's jaw clenched. I watched those men march to their deaths. I heard them screaming. I survived because I was turned that night. A vampire queen found me dying and offered me immortality. He pulled the car onto the shoulder and stopped, turned to face Maya fully. I've carried that guilt for 160 years. That's why I built Frost Tower on that land. That's why I've tried to maintain the balance. It's not atonement. Nothing can atone for what my brother did. But I thought if I could at least give them peace, if I could make sure they weren't forgotten. His voice broke. Maya stared at him, this ancient creature who could kill her with one hand, who commanded empires, who'd lived through centuries. And right now he looked like a young man drowning in grief. You can't carry your brother's sins forever, Maya said quietly. Can I? Gabriel's smile was bitter. I'm immortal. Forever is exactly how long I have to carry them. Then maybe, Maya said, it's time to let the dead speak for themselves. Gabriel looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded and pulled back onto the highway. They drove for another 30 minutes. The silence between them was different now, less hostile. More understanding. December 25th, 5:15 p.m. Maya's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. Should I answer it? She asked. I don't know, Gabriel said, but something tells me you should. Maya pressed accept and held the phone to her ear. Static crackled. Then beneath it a voice. Thin, desperate, layered with dozens of other voices speaking in unison. Maya, please hurry. She nearly dropped the phone. Gabriel glanced at her, his expression sharp. Who is it? Them, Maya whispered. They're calling me. She pressed the phone closer. I'm coming, I promise, just hold on. The voices exploded into chaos, screaming, sobbing, rage and terror mixing into a sound that felt like claws scraping inside her skull. You left us, traitor, liar. We trusted you and you abandoned us. I didn't abandon you, Maya said, tears streaming down her face. I was fired. I was forced to leave. But I'm coming back. I swear I'm coming back. The screaming intensified. Maya gasped and ended the call, but the voices didn't stop. They were in her head now, louder than ever. They're angry, she whispered. They think I betrayed them. They're frightened, Gabriel corrected. He pressed harder on the accelerator. The speedometer climbed past 90. Fear makes them lash out. They don't understand why you left. Maya closed her eyes, trying to block out the voices, but they were everywhere, in her bones, in every breath. What if I can't calm them? What if I'm not strong enough? You calmed them before without even trying, Gabriel said. You didn't know what you were doing and it still worked. Now you do know. That makes you stronger, not weaker. December 25th, 5:35 p.m. The car crested a hill and suddenly the city skyline appeared, a jagged silhouette against the darkening sky, and rising above everything else, Frost Tower. Maya's heart stopped. Around the building, visible even from miles away, a massive vortex of spirits swirled, hundreds of translucent figures circling the tower like a tornado. Some were soldiers in tattered uniforms. Others were shapeless shadows. All of them were screaming. Oh my God, Maya breathed. Gabriel's expression was grim. They've fully crossed over. The veil is gone. On the streets below, Maya could see chaos. Police cars forming barricades. Civilians running. News helicopters circling at a distance. And at the base of the building, a group of figures stood in a semicircle. Even from here, Maya could tell they weren't human. Your council, she said. Yes, Gabriel's voice was tight. They're preparing the ritual. If we don't stop them in the next 15 minutes, they'll burn the spirits out. He swerved around, slower traffic horn blaring. Maya gripped the door handle as they flew down the exit ramp. Gabriel, she said, what happens if I can't do this? He didn't answer immediately, just navigated through increasingly congested streets, getting closer to the tower. Finally, he said, then we all die. Them, us, everyone. December 25th, 5:47 p.m. The car screeched to a stop 2 blocks from the building. Police had blocked off the streets. Gabriel and Maya climbed out into chaos. Sirens wailed. People shouted. Camera flashes popped like fireworks. And above it all, the roar of 347 spirits tearing through reality. Gabriel took Maya's hand. His skin was cold, but his grip was firm. I won't let anything happen to you, he said. I promise. You can't promise that. I can try. They walked toward the police barricade. Officers shouted at them to stay back. Gabriel's eyes flashed red for just a moment, and the officers stepped aside, confused but compliant. Vampire compulsion, Maya realized. They crossed the barricade and entered the kill zone. The 7 members of the Vampire Council stood in formation at the base of Frost Tower. Each wore dark clothing that seemed to absorb light. Each held their hands extended palms up, preparing to channel power. The leader, a tall man with white hair and a face like carved ice, turned as Gabriel and Maya approached. "You're late, Gabriel," he said. His voice could have frozen water. "And you brought the mentally ill girl. How touching." "Vincent, don't," Gabriel said. "Give her a chance." "A chance?" A woman next to Vincent laughed, and her name tag read Cassandra Vale. "Look around you, Gabriel. The masquerade is broken. Humans have footage of ghosts. Our existence is at risk. There is no chance. There is only damage control. If you burn them, you'll tear the veil permanently," Gabriel argued. "You know this." "Then we'll seal it with blood magic," Vincent said dismissively. "We've done it before. Not on this scale. You're talking about 347 bound spirits connected to a mass grave that's been festering for a century and a half. The backlash will destroy half the city. Better half a city than our exposure." Gabriel stepped in front of Maya. "You'll have to go through me first." Vincent's eyes flashed red. "So be it." "Wait," everyone turned. A woman pushed through the crowd of police officers. 45 years old, blonde hair, designer suit. Patricia Morgan. She pointed at Maya. "That girl is mentally ill. She's dangerous. She needs to be removed from the area immediately." 2 police officers moved toward Maya. Gabriel snarled. The sound was inhuman. Terrifying. The officers froze. "She's under my protection," Gabriel said. His voice carried power that made even the Vampire Council members tense. "Anyone who touches her answers to me." Patricia's face went red. "I'm calling the city. I'm calling the mayor. This is a public safety issue." "No, ma'am," Gabriel said quietly. "This is a cover-up. You knew what Maya was. Eleanor told you. She asked you to hire her, to put her in the East Wing, to help her." Patricia's eyes widened. "That's not—" "You agreed?" Gabriel continued. His voice was cold, merciless. "You knew the spirits needed a listener. You knew Maya could help. But when she actually started hearing them, when she tried to do the job you hired her for, you got scared." He took a step toward Patricia. "You're a failed listener, aren't you, Patricia? You heard them once, 20 years ago, but you couldn't handle it. You broke. And when you saw Maya succeeding where you failed, you couldn't stand it." Patricia's face crumbled. "That's not true." "Then why did you fire her so publicly?" Gabriel demanded. "Why humiliate her in front of 50 employees? Why call her insane when you knew she was telling the truth?" Silence fell over the crowd. Even the spirits seemed to quiet waiting. Patricia's shoulders slumped. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Because I was jealous." The admission hung in the air like smoke. "I heard them for 3 months," Patricia said. 20 years ago, I heard them crying and I couldn't do anything. Couldn't help them. Couldn't make it stop. I had a breakdown. Spent 6 months in therapy. Lost my position. Had to claw my way back to where I am now." Tears streamed down her face. "And then this girl walks in and she's doing it. She's actually listening. She's helping them." Her voice broke. "I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand watching her succeed where I failed." David Torres had appeared in the crowd. He stared at Patricia with something like horror. "You knew," he said. "You knew she was telling the truth and you fired her anyway." Patricia didn't answer, just stood there crying, the weight of her betrayal finally visible. Maya stepped around Gabriel. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "I forgive you," she said to Patricia. "I understand what it's like to be afraid, to be overwhelmed, to feel like you're breaking under something no one else can see." She turned to the Vampire Council, to the crowd of police and reporters and civilians, to everyone watching. "But those spirits aren't the enemy. They're victims. They've been abandoned and forgotten for 160 years, and now they're desperate, scared, lashing out because they don't know what else to do." She looked up at the swirling vortex of souls, at the tower shrouded in supernatural chaos. "Let me talk to them. Let me listen. That's all they want. That's all they've ever wanted." Vincent considered her for a long moment. "You have 5 minutes," he said finally. "Prove us wrong or we act." Maya took a breath, then another. Then she walked toward the building. Gabriel tried to follow. Vincent blocked him. "This is her test," Vincent said. "She goes alone." Maya kept walking. The spirit's screaming grew louder. The temperature plummeted. Ice formed on the pavement beneath her feet. She reached the edge of the vortex and stopped. The wall of spirits towered above her. Dozens, hundreds, all of them reaching, crying, begging. Maya closed her eyes and stepped inside. The cold hit her like a physical wall. Ice formed on her clothes, her hair, her eyelashes. The spirits pressed close, their translucent faces twisted with confusion and rage and desperate hope. You came back. Why did you leave us? Are you real? Are you really here? Maya stood in the center of the maelstrom. The voices were deafening, overwhelming. She could feel herself starting to drown under the weight of their collective grief. Her knees buckled. She was falling. This was too much. She couldn't do this. She wasn't strong enough. And then she heard it, beneath all the chaos. One voice, clear and young and heartbreakingly hopeful. You can do it. You're our listener. You're our light. James, Maya opened her eyes. And they were glowing, brilliant, blazing white. Power surged through her, not hers, theirs. The collective strength of 347 souls who'd been waiting for someone to finally see them. Maya stood. The spirits fell back, suddenly silent. Her voice when she spoke wasn't just hers. It carried the weight of 7 generations of veil seers, of every woman who'd ever listened to the forgotten dead. Stop! The word echoed across the street, through the building, through the veil itself. Everyone froze. Vincent, Cassandra, Gabriel, the police, the reporters, the civilians. Even the spirits went still. Maya stood surrounded by ghosts, her eyes blazing white power radiating from her like light. And in that moment, she wasn't just Maya Chen, the fired intern. She was the keeper, the last listener, the bridge between worlds. And she was about to change everything. The silence was absolute. 347 spirits hung suspended in the air, frozen mid-motion. The Vampire Council stood like statues. The crowd of humans, police officers, reporters, civilians held their breath. Even the snow seemed to pause, flakes hovering weightless between earth and sky. And in the center of it all, Maya Chen stood with eyes blazing white power, coursing through her like electricity through water. Vincent Cross took a step forward. For the first time in centuries, uncertainty flickered across his ancient face. "What are you?" he whispered. Maya turned to look at him. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that shouldn't exist in human vocal cords. The voices of the dead layered beneath her own. "I'm a listener, and I've seen all their memories." She extended her hand toward the swirling vortex of spirits. Images began to appear in the air, translucent, shimmering, like someone had turned memory into visible light. A battlefield, 1863, blood-soaked earth, the thunder of cannons, young men in blue uniforms, faces twisted with terror, running toward Confederate lines. 347 soldiers sent to die. The vision expanded. Maya's power, or the spirit's power channeled through her, made everyone see what she saw. The Vampire Council, Gabriel, the police, the reporters with their cameras capturing every impossible moment. They saw Private James Mitchell, 19 years old, clutching a sketchbook even as bullets whipped past. They saw Sergeant Robert Hayes, 32, whispering his wife's name like a prayer. They saw boys barely 16 pretending to be men, marching towards certain death because someone in command had decided their lives were expendable. The vision shifted. A field hospital. A woman with dark hair and exhausted eyes moving between cots. Mei Chen, nurse, healer, the first veil seer. She knelt beside James Mitchell. His chest was torn open, blood soaking through the bandages she'd just applied. They both knew he was dying. "What's your name, soldier?" May's voice was gentle. "Private James Mitchell, ma'am." His words came out wet, bubbling. 19, from Pennsylvania. I wanted to be an artist." "What would you have painted?" "Everything." James smiled despite the pain. "Sunsets, my mother's garden, the way light hits water." He coughed, blood flecked his lips. "Tell my sister, Anna Mitchell. Tell her I loved her. Tell her I tried to come home." May took his hand. "I will, I promise. I'll remember you, James Mitchell. I'll make sure you mattered." James's eyes closed. His last breath rattled out, and May kept holding his hand, crying, making a promise that would bind 7 generations of women to the forgotten dead. The vision faded. Maya stood in the present, tears streaming down her glowing white eyes, the weight of that promise heavy on her shoulders. "Anna Mitchell," she said, her voice breaking. "James's sister. She married 5 years later, became Anna Chen. She's my great-great-great-grandmother." The crowd gasped. Even Vincent looked stunned. "Private James Mitchell is my family," Maya continued, "and I'm here because Mei Chun made a promise 160 years ago." She looked at the spirits surrounding her. "I'm here to keep it." Gabriel had pushed through the crowd. He stood at the edge of the vortex now, his ancient eyes wet with something that might have been blood tears. "I was there," he said quietly. "I watched them die. My brother gave the order. General Harrison Frost. He sacrificed them to buy time for the main army." Gabriel's voice cracked. "I've carried that guilt for 160 years. I built Frost Tower to watch over them. But I failed. I let them be forgotten." Maya turned to him. The anger she'd felt toward him, toward his company, his empire built on bones softened. Not disappeared, but softened. "Then help me remember them now." She turned back to the spirits. The white light in her eyes pulsed brighter. "Tell me your names," she said. Not a command, a plea. "Tell me who you were. Tell me how you want to be remembered." The spirits hung suspended, waiting, testing her sincerity. Then James Mitchell's translucent form separated from the mass. He drifted forward until he floated 3 feet from Maya. Up close, she could see every detail. The sketch pencil tucked behind his ear, the smudge of charcoal on his fingers, the desperate, aching hope in his eyes. "Private James Mitchell," he said. His voice was like wind through leaves. 19 years old. I wanted to be an artist. I drew horses and trees and my mother's face." He paused. "Tell Anna. Tell her I kept the promise. I tried to come home." Maya's throat closed with emotion. Anna knew James. She lived a full life, married, had children. "Your blood continues through me. You're not forgotten. You never were." James's translucent face transformed. The sorrow lifted. He smiled, really smiled for the first time in over a century. "She remembered," he whispered. "She really remembered." "Every day of her life," Maya said softly. James began to glow, not with the cold, ghostly light he'd had before, with warmth. Gold spreading through his translucent form like sunrise. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for keeping the promise my sister couldn't." He faded, not violently, not with screaming or pain, just peacefully, like a person finally allowed to sleep after a long and terrible night. One down, 346 to go. Another spirit approached. Older than James, sergeant stripes on his uniform. "Sergeant Robert Hayes," he said, 32, married to Sarah Hayes. "3 children. I never got to say goodbye to them." "Robert Hayes," Maya repeated. Her voice was steady now, strong. "I hear you. I remember you. Sarah lived to be 83. She never remarried. She kept your photograph on her mantle until the day she died. Your children knew their father was a hero." Robert's face crumpled with relief. "She didn't forget. Never." He too began to glow, to fade, to find peace. "Thank you," he whispered as he dissolved into light. One by one they came. Private David Kimmel, 20, wanted to be a teacher. Corporal Thomas Carter, 25, had a sweetheart named Elizabeth. Private Samuel Brooks, 17, lied about his age to enlist. Sergeant Marcus Foster, 40, father of 6. Maya spoke each name aloud, acknowledged each life, each death, each forgotten soul. The Vampire Council watched in silence. Vincent's flames had extinguished. Cassandra had tears on her face. Even the oldest among them, a vampire so ancient he'd forgotten his human name, had fallen to his knees in something like reverence. Gabriel stood beside Maya now. When she faltered after the 50th name, exhaustion pulling at her, he caught her elbow. "I'm here," he said quietly. "I won't let you fall." "I know their names," Maya whispered. "I can see all their memories. Every single one. It's overwhelming." "Then I'll help you." Gabriel turned to the spirits. His voice rang out across the street. "I was there. I watched you die. I was a Union soldier before I was turned. My name was Gabriel Frost Private, and I stood on that field and did nothing while my brother sent you to your deaths." His voice broke. "I'm sorry. I've been sorry for 160 years. But sorry isn't enough, so I'll stand here with this brave woman and I'll help her remember every single one of you. Your names, your lives, the things that mattered." He looked at Maya. "Tell me who to call next." Together they worked through the names. Maya spoke each one. Gabriel added details. He'd been there. He'd fought alongside some of them. He remembered faces and voices, and last words spoken on a blood-soaked field. The crowd around them grew. Police officers had lowered their weapons. Reporters filmed with tears streaming down their faces. And slowly, carefully, civilians began to kneel. One woman, then another. Then a man in a business suit. Then a teenager. By the time Maya spoke the 100th name, half the crowd was on their knees. Not in worship, in respect. In acknowledgement of sacrifice too long ignored. David Torres pushed through to Gabriel's other side. He saluted the spirits. "I'm sorry," he said to them. "I escorted her out. I should have listened. I should have believed." He turned to Maya. "I'm sorry. Forgive me." "You were doing your job," Maya said gently. "It's okay." Even Patricia Morgan approached. She stood at the edge of the vortex, her face ravaged by guilt and shame. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the spirits, to Maya. "I was weak. I was jealous. I failed you all." Maya looked at her, the woman who'd fired her, humiliated her, nearly destroyed her. "I forgive you," Maya said, "but you need to heal Patricia. You need to face what you ran from." Patricia nodded and knelt, whispering apologies to the dead. The naming continued. 100, 150, 200. Maya's voice grew hoarse. Gabriel supported her weight. The white light in her eyes never dimmed, but her physical body was reaching its limits. "I can't," she whispered after the 230th name. "It's too many. I'm not strong enough." "Yes, you are," Gabriel said. "Look." He pointed. The spirits that remained were glowing, bright and warm. They weren't angry anymore, weren't desperate. They were calm, peaceful, waiting their turn with infinite patience because they finally knew that someone cared. "They believe in you," Gabriel said. "And so do I." Maya took a shuddering breath, then another. She straightened her spine. "You're right." She turned back to the spirits. "Who's next?" Private Jonathan Liu, 21. Wanted to be a doctor. Corporal James Washington, 28. Fought for a country that wouldn't give him full citizenship. Private Henry Mueller, 18. Spoke 3 languages. 250. 270, 300. The sun had set now. The deadline Vincent had given them had passed. But the Vampire Council hadn't moved, hadn't interrupted. They stood witness to something none of them had seen in centuries. Redemption. Real redemption. 325. Maya's legs gave out. Gabriel caught her, lowering her gently to the frozen pavement. She sat cross-legged, still speaking names, still refusing to stop. The final 20 spirits approached together. Young men, most barely out of boyhood. They died within minutes of each other, charging the same hill cut down by the same volley of gunfire. They gave their names, one after another. Maya repeated each one. Gabriel added memories. David Torres saluted. Patricia Morgan wept. And finally, there was only one left. Private William Harrison, 16 years old, the youngest. He'd lied about his age, wanted to prove he was brave. "William Harrison," Maya said. Her voice was barely a whisper now. 16, you were brave. You were so brave." William smiled. "I'm scared," he admitted. "What happens next after we go?" "I don't know," Maya said honestly, "but it won't be lonely. It won't be cold. And you'll be remembered, I promise." William nodded. He began to glow like the others. But before he faded, he looked at Gabriel. "Your brother made a mistake," William said. "But you didn't. You stayed. You tried. That counts for something." Then he was gone. The vortex dissolved. The temperature rose. The unnatural cold that had gripped the area evaporated in seconds. Frost Tower stood silent and still, no longer shrouded in supernatural chaos. The spirits were at peace. Maya slumped in Gabriel's arms, the white light finally fading from her eyes. She looked up at him, exhausted, tears drying on her cheeks. "I did it," she whispered. "They're resting now." "You did it," Gabriel agreed. His voice was thick with emotion. "You saved them. You saved all of us." Vincent Cross approached. The ancient vampire leader knelt before Maya. Actually knelt. "Forgive us," he said. "We didn't understand. We thought they were monsters. But they were victims. And you?" He looked at her with something like awe. "You're the most powerful listener in 300 years." Cassandra Vale knelt beside him. Then the others. All 7 members of the Vampire Council kneeling before a 24-year-old fired intern. "We were wrong," Cassandra said. "We ask your forgiveness, and we offer our protection. You are under the Council's shield now. No one may harm you. No one may threaten you. You are—" She paused, searching for words. "You are essential." Maya didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. Gabriel helped her to her feet. The crowd around them erupted into applause. Police officers, reporters, civilians, even the Vampire Council members were clapping. Maya stood there, swaying slightly, overwhelmed by it all. A reporter pushed forward with a microphone. Miss Chen, what you just did, how did you do that? Are you some kind of medium?" "I'm a listener," Maya said. Her voice was hoarse but clear. "I hear the dead, and I give them what they need. Acknowledgement, remembrance, proof that their lives mattered." "What happens now?" another reporter called. Maya looked at Gabriel. He looked back at her, a question in his ancient eyes. "Now," Maya said slowly, "things change." 3 days later, December 28th, Maya woke in a room she didn't recognize. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. The bed was impossibly soft with Egyptian cotton sheets and pillows that felt like clouds. For a moment, she thought she'd died and gone somewhere peaceful. Then she saw Gabriel sitting in a chair by the window reading a leather-bound book and remembered. "You're awake," he said, setting the book aside. "How do you feel?" Maya sat up slowly. Her body ached, but not painfully. More like she'd run a marathon and was finally allowed to rest. "Like I slept for a week." 3 days, Gabriel corrected. He poured water from a crystal pitcher into a glass and handed it to her. "A doctor checked you, exhaustion, dehydration, nothing permanent. Your grandmother has called 14 times. I assured her you were safe." Maya drank the water gratefully. Memories flooded back. The spirits, the naming, the council kneeling. "Did it work?" she asked. "Are they really at peace?" "The building is quiet," Gabriel said. "No more cold spots, no more shadows, no more voices. The veil is stable." He moved to the window looking out over the city. "You saved hundreds of lives, Maya, maybe thousands. The council's ritual would have been catastrophic." He turned back to her. "You also saved me." Maya set down the glass. "Where am I?" "My personal quarters, top floor of Frost Tower." He saw her alarm and quickly added, "There's a guest bedroom. You've been completely safe. I've been sleeping, or rather staying in my office." Maya relaxed slightly. She looked around the room. It was beautiful, tasteful, expensive in a way that didn't feel gaudy. "What happened to Patricia?" she asked. "Fired," Gabriel said flatly. "Publicly. The board voted unanimously. She's facing possible criminal charges for knowingly putting employees at risk." David Torres escorted her from the building. There was grim satisfaction in his voice. "And the council, they've withdrawn their threat completely. You impressed them. More than impressed, you earned their respect. That's rare for anyone, let alone a human." He paused. "Cassandra has been asking when she can meet with you properly. She wants to understand your abilities. Learn from you." Maya's head spun. "I don't know what I did. I just listened." "You did more than that." Gabriel pulled a folder from his desk and handed it to her. "You gave them peace. Real peace. For the first time in over a century, those souls are resting." Maya opened the folder. Inside was a contract. Thick, legal, intimidating. "What is this, a job offer?" Gabriel said. "Not an employment agreement. Something different." Maya read the document, her eyes widening with each line. "Position keeper of the veil term, indefinite renewable annually at employee's discretion, salary $150,000 annually, plus full benefits and housing allowance. Reporting structure, reports directly to CEO, independent of all other departments. Responsibilities, maintains spiritual balance within Frost Tower properties, monitors veil integrity, serves as liaison between the living and the dead. Special provisions, cannot be terminated without unanimous approval from Board of Directors and Vampire Council. Employee has full authority to refuse any request that conflicts with primary duties. Company will establish memorial and provide all resources necessary for proper remembrance of the deceased asterisk. Employee granted seat on advisory board with full voting rights." Maya looked up stunned. This is a guarantee that I'll never be fired for doing my job again." "Yes," Gabriel said, "it's also recognition of what you are, what you can do. You'll have the resources and protection you need, the authority to make decisions, the voice to be heard." He paused. "I failed you once. I won't fail you again." Tears pricked Maya's eyes. She'd spent 3 months as an intern being ignored, dismissed, treated as if her concerns were delusions. Now she was being offered power. Real power. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Because it's right," Gabriel said simply. "And because I'm 312 years old and I've learned that some things are more important than profit or secrecy. Those spirits deserve peace. You gave it to them. Now I'm giving you what you deserve. Recognition." Maya read through the contract again. The salary alone was more than she'd ever imagined earning. The protections were ironclad, and the title Keeper of the Veil felt like something out of a fairy tale. But it was real. "There's no pressure," Gabriel added. "If you want to walk away, I understand. You've done enough, more than enough." Maya thought of the voices that had haunted her for months. The spirits who'd followed her home, desperate and afraid. William's kind eyes, Robert Hayes's unfinished goodbye. All 347 souls who'd waited over a century for someone to remember them. She thought of her grandmother who'd spent 42 years carrying this burden alone. She thought of the other listeners, generations of women who'd given their lives to tend the forgotten dead. And she realized this wasn't just a job offer. It was a legacy. I accept, Maya said, her voice steady, on one condition. Gabriel raised an eyebrow. Name it. I want a memorial in the building, with all their names. Private James Mitchell, Sergeant Robert Hayes, all of them. They shouldn't be forgotten anymore. A slow smile spread across Gabriel's face. Consider it done. The lobby, I think, a wall of black granite with gold lettering, 20 feet high, impossible to miss. Maya extended her hand. Then we have a deal. Gabriel shook it, his grip firm and respectful. Welcome to Frost Tower Keeper Chen. 4 weeks later, late January, Maya stood in the lobby of Frost Tower, staring at the memorial wall. It was beautiful, polished black granite stretching 20 feet high, with 347 names engraved in gleaming gold. At the top, a simple inscription. Here rest the forgotten soldiers of 1863. We remember you. We honor you. May you finally know peace. Employees passed by throughout the day, pausing to read the names. Some looked confused. Others looked moved. One young analyst stood for 10 minutes, tears streaming down her face because her great-great-grandfather's name was there. Private David Kimmel, the teacher who never got to teach. Maya touched the stone, gently feeling the cool surface beneath her fingers. The building was quiet now, peaceful. The spirits slept no longer, crying out in the darkness. But Maya could still sense them, a gentle presence, watching, grateful. You kept your promise, a voice whispered. Maya smiled. James Mitchell's spirit flickered beside her, barely visible in the afternoon light. He appeared sometimes, not often, just enough to check in, to make sure she was okay. So did you, Maya said softly. You trusted me. Will you stay, he asked. Yes, I'll stay for as long as you need me. James smiled, and then he faded, returning to his rest. Maya walked to her new office. Not a cubicle, a real office with a door and windows, and a nameplate that read, Maya Chen, Keeper of the Veil. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop. An email from Gabriel waited. Subject: Seattle Property Maya. We've received reports of potential veil disturbance at our Seattle location. Employees reporting cold spots, shadows, unexplained sounds. Nothing urgent yet, but worth investigating. Your expertise is requested, all travel expenses covered. No rush, handle it when you're ready. Also, I'd like to accompany you, if you're comfortable with that. Gee, Maya read the email twice, then smiled and started typing her response. A knock at her door interrupted her. She looked up to see Gabriel standing in the doorway holding 2 coffee cups. Thought you might need this, he said, for the Seattle research. Maya laughed. You don't drink coffee? No, Gabriel set 1 cup on her desk. But I'm learning to enjoy watching someone else enjoy it. He lingered in the doorway. There was something different about him today. Less formal, more human somehow. I wanted to thank you again, he said, for what you did. Not just for the spirits, for me. I've carried guilt for 160 years. Watching you give them peace, it didn't erase what my brother did, but it helped, more than I can say. Maya stood and walked around her desk. You stayed, you tried. That counts for something. William said so himself. Gabriel's eyes, usually so controlled, so ancient, softened. I've lived 312 years. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've loved and lost more times than I can count. But I've never felt. He paused, searching for words. Hope, real hope, until you. Maya's heart skipped. Gabriel, I'm not asking for anything, he said quickly. I just wanted you to know. You've changed things, changed me, and I'm grateful. He turned to leave. Wait, Maya said. Gabriel stopped. Would you like to get dinner sometime? Maya asked. Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. Not business, just dinner. Gabriel turned back slowly. A smile, genuine, warm, devastating, spread across his face. I'd like that very much. They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with possibility. Then Gabriel's phone buzzed. He checked it and sighed. Council meeting. I have to go, but Maya, he met her eyes. Thank you for everything. He left. Maya sat back at her desk, a smile playing at her lips. She finished her email response to Gabriel, agreeing to the Seattle trip, and hit send. Her phone rang. Grandma Eleanor. Hi, Grandma, Maya answered. Sweetheart, I saw the news. I saw what you did. The memorial. Eleanor's voice was thick with emotion. I'm so proud of you. So proud. I couldn't have done it without you, Maya said. You carried this burden for 42 years. You showed me it was possible. You did more than possible. You did the impossible. Eleanor paused. Are you happy? Really happy? Maya looked around her office, at the nameplate on her door, at the view of the city through her window, at the coffee Gabriel had brought her. Yes, she said. I think I am. Good, that's all I ever wanted for you, son. They talked for another 20 minutes. About the memorial, about Seattle, about the future. When Maya finally hung up, she felt lighter than she had in years. A soft shimmer in the air caught her attention. James Mitchell's spirit appeared more solid than usual. Thank you, and he said, for keeping the promise, for remembering us all. Always, Maya said. That's my job now. It's more than a job, James said. It's a calling, just like it was for May, just like it was for Eleanor. You're part of something bigger now. He began to fade. One more thing, he said. The vampire, Gabriel, he's a good man. Don't let his age scare you. He needs you as much as you needed us. Maya blushed. Was it that obvious? James grinned. I've been watching people fall in love for 160 years. I know the signs. Then he was gone. Maya sat alone in her office, smiling, feeling the weight of her new responsibility settle over her shoulders. It was heavy, but it was right. She was the keeper now, the bridge between worlds, the voice for the voiceless. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. 6 months later, July, Maya stood at the memorial wall, touching James Mitchell's name, as had become her morning ritual. The lobby bustled with activity. Employees hurried to meetings. Delivery people carried packages. Life continued normal and mundane above ground, where 347 soldiers rested in peace. A hand touched her shoulder. She turned to find Gabriel, holding a travel mug of coffee. For the flight, he said. Seattle, remember. Maya took the coffee and smiled. In 6 months, their relationship had evolved into something she couldn't quite name. Not quite romance, not yet, but more than friendship. They had dinner once a week. He'd taught her about veil mechanics and spirit behavior. She'd taught him that immortality didn't mean you couldn't change. Ready? Gabriel asked. Always. They walked toward the exit together. David Torres waved from the security desk. Several employees called out greetings. Maya was no longer the crazy intern. She was respected, valued, needed. As they stepped outside into the summer sunshine, Maya's phone buzzed. A message from the Seattle property manager. It's getting worse. Please hurry. Looks like they need us, Maya said. Gabriel's hand found hers. She didn't pull away. Then let's go help them, he said. They walked down the street past the crowds, past the normal people living normal lives. A vampire and a listener. A man who'd lived 3 centuries and a woman who'd found her calling at 24. Behind them, Frost Tower stood tall against the sky. Inside, a memorial honored the forgotten. And beneath it all, in the earth where they'd been buried, nameless and unmourned, 347 souls finally rested. Because someone had listened, because someone had cared, because Maya Chen had kept a promise made by her ancestor 160 years ago. And this was just the beginning. 1 year after the naming ceremony, the memorial wall at Frost Tower had become more than stone and names. It had become a pilgrimage site. Every day descendants came. Historians documented. Strangers wept for soldiers they'd never known. Maya stood before it on a quiet Sunday morning, her reflection ghosted in the polished granite. Behind her, Gabriel waited patiently, hands in his pockets, giving her the moment she needed. Ready for London? He asked softly when she turned. The Seattle case had led to Portland, Portland to San Francisco to Denver. Each city held its own forgotten souls, each building its own wounds, and Maya had listened to them all. Always, she said. They walked toward the exit together. The morning sun caught Gabriel's face, and Maya realized something had changed. He looked less like winter now, less like something frozen in time. He looked alive. At the doors, Maya paused. She glanced back one last time at the memorial, at the names gleaming gold in the light, and for just a moment she saw them. All 347, translucent, smiling, at peace. James Mitchell stood at the front sketchbook under his arm. He raised his hand in farewell. Thank you, he mouthed. We'll be here when you come home. Then they faded. Maya smiled and stepped through the doors into the bright summer morning. The work continued. The promise endured. And Maya Chen, keeper of the veil, walked forward into her future, no longer the girl who heard voices, but the woman who gave them voice. Behind her, carved in gold on black stone, 347 names stood witness. Remembered. Honored. Finally at peace.